You are listening to the Drink Less Lifestyle podcast with Dr. Sherry Price, episode number 163.
Welcome to Drink Less Lifestyle, a podcast for successful women who want to change their relationship with alcohol. If you want to drink less, feel healthier, and start loving life again, you're in the right place. Please remember that the information in this podcast does not constitute medical advice. Now, here's your host, Dr. Sherry Price.
Well, hello, friend. How is your month of November going? Doesn't it kind of seem crazy that we have less than 8 weeks left in 2023? Oh my gosh, I can't believe such limited time is left in this year. But it is a perfect time to be talking about today's topic, which is about elevating your standards. So if I was to ask you, what are your standards? How would you answer that question? I know sometimes when I ask that of my clients, they'll look back at me like, what do you mean by that question? Standards in what area? Standards for what? So I asked that question because I want you to get really familiar with what your standards are, because I find a lot of people don't even know them or they don't think about them. And I'll tell you, if you have kids, you think about standards a lot, right? Because you know if you have kids that you have standards for your children, whether standards around grades, whether it's standards around if they say please and thank you, whether they spend their time on things that you find acceptable or unacceptable behaviors that you allow inside the house versus behaviors you allow outside the house, right? These are all standards. Maybe you have standards around their friends and who you allow them to hang out with and who you don't allow them to hang out with. It could be standards in the way they speak to adults or speak to you that may be acceptable or unacceptable. Or maybe you have family standards or family values and you talk about those. I know we talk about our family values around dinner, and we talk about how my husband lives them out at his job and out in the world, and how I live them out in my workplace and out in the world, and then how our daughter lives out our standards for our household and our family values out there in the world, because that is important to us. I want her to know what our standards are as a family. I want to know what my standards are as an individual. And I think it's really important to define that. And if you have standards for your kids, I'd also like you to think, do you have those same standards for yourself? Right? Do you require that you say please and thank you to adults? Right? What are the standards that you set? And are they similar to the standards that you have for your children? You may find that your standards are lower or your standards for yourself are higher. I think it's just really valuable to know what your standards are for yourself. Because it turns out that if you don't define them, or you haven't thought about this, a lot of people, when it's not intentional, they just operate from their default standard. And I will tell you, the default standard for most people is not their very best. Your default standard is generally subpar. You probably would be saying your default standard is who is not your best self. It's like the opposite of your best self. It's like just making it through the day, right? And whatever was thrown at you, you just kind of collapsed. That's how a lot of people would say their default standard is. However, there could be variations, right? Maybe that's an atypical day. But if you don't set an elevated standard for yourself, chances are you will run counter to that, meaning you will operate at a default standard. So doing this exercise, I want to just caution you that this could be quite humbling. What I'm going to be asking on this podcast episode, the questions I will be asking around this. But when you address this, I find many of my clients have breakthroughs after doing this. It can really see how you are currently operating and where you want to be operating. So I've done this work recently with a few of my clients, and that's why I say it's humbling, because when I did it for myself, it was humbling. And then when I've walked clients through this work, it's also humbling for them. So if you're feeling that, know that you're right on par with where you should be in doing this exercise. And here's what I mean by humbling. I think we know we're good people. We do. We are good people. We do good things in the world. We're compassionate. We're loving. We're caring. We're taking care of all the things. We have a lot that we're juggling on our plate. And a lot of us talk a mean game, myself included, right? We say that we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And when it comes time to actually do the thing that you say you're going to do you actually do the thing? And a lot of times when I am helping people who are feeling overwhelmed, and like I mentioned, these last few clients, they're finding out that they're saying they're doing all these things, but in actuality, when it comes time to do them, they're not doing them. And it's the fact that they're not doing them that makes them feel so crappy about themselves. And I just want to highlight, our brains can think magnificent things about ourselves, which is great, but we also want to be honest with ourselves. Is our actions matching how we're thinking? So we don't want to just say we're going to do all these things, have this mean game, talk this mean talk, and then not be about the action component. And so what I was doing this work with clients is coming back to their standards, really getting clear what they want their standards to be. And a lot of times it's a little more elevated than where they're operating at right now. And so I want to invite you into looking at where you're operating now. We'll call that your default, and then where you want to go and how to do that. So when you're operating currently right now, if you are not where you want to be, or if there's a big gap in where you are and where you want to be, let's get honest about where we're operating from. And a lot of times that might just be on default. Maybe this way of operating got you to a certain level of success, a certain level of life is good, and then you stopped wanting to achieve more, or you stopped raising the bar for yourself, which happens. And so your current self can feel stuck because you're here, but your higher self wants to be there, which is a bit more elevated in terms of your standard for yourself. And so why aren't you there? Well, a whole host of reasons. And it comes back to when I ask my clients this, right? We get a lot of things happen in life. It could be, well, my job got in the way, whether it's a paid job or the volunteer work that you do or the home work that you do, right? All of that could get in the way. Or I hear, well, my husband's not on board. And if he was just more supportive, or if he was just on board, or if he wanted these same goals that I did, it would just make it easier. Or it could be that the house and this project came up, or this broke in our house and it fell on me to find the repairman and arrange it all. Or maybe it's the kids that need to be run to all the different sports at the end of the day and get your attention. Or it could be that small spider in the corner that you need to kill. And all of a sudden you have to look for the paper towels. And where are the paper towels? And oh my gosh, they didn't put the paper towels back in the spot. And then paper towel roll is empty. Who didn't throw out the paper towel roll? Now I have to look for different paper towels. And then I got to find the Windex. And oh my gosh, this room is so dirty. And now I'm going to get the vacuum cleaner. And you see how our mind can just go. Right? Our mind can just be like, it's this, it's this, it's this. And it's that too. It's that little spider in the corner and I couldn't find the darn paper towels. And so you get the point that distractions, they're endless. We're going to have the house that falls apart and needs immediate attention. We're going to have the kids that need to be run to all the different things and they need our attention. And we're going to have the spider that needs to be killed all of a sudden and have our attention. The distractions out there, my friends, they're endless. They really are. If we keep looking to the outside world, we're going to keep getting more and more distracted away from the person we want to be and the person we want to become. And this is what happens when you default back to your default standards. You start sinking to the default standards because you're paying attention to too much on the outside and not enough on, hey, what are my standards? What do I want for my life? How do I want to be treating myself and my body? And so when you're operating on default standards, here's what happens. You are not eating the way you want to be eating. You're not making the choices around food that you know that will fuel you for best health and feeling good. Not just in the moment, but an hour after the meal, 2 hours after the meal, 3 hours after the meal, the next day after that meal. Right? So when we're operating on default standards, we're not eating the way we want to be eating. We're also not doing the things we want to be doing. Yes, they can be calendared out on our calendar. And it could say gym at 5 o'clock or gym at 5 a.m. or whatever, right? But we're not actually doing it because we're operating on default standards, which means we're paying attention too much to the world around us and the distractions. When we're operating on default standards, you know what else happens? We are not aligned with the amount of alcohol we want to be drinking. We overdrink. We cave to drinking. We think, oh my gosh, I had such a rough day. The world was so overtaxing. There was so much stimulation. There's so many distractions. Let me just give myself a minute here and just enjoy a glass of wine. Plus. And then when you're operating on default standards, you're really not in alignment with your truest and highest goals for yourself. You're just not. And so operating in default mode and default standards makes you not much, if any, progress at all towards your goals, which means if you're not progressing, you're actually sliding backwards. And this becomes problematic the longer you let it fester on. And the longer you let it fester on, you know what happens? Your brain starts to say, oh, this is the way I normally operate. So these aren't my default standards. These are just my normal standards, my normal operating standards. And the normal operating standards, you know why they are subpar is because they're really not tapping in to the highest self or the version of us that we truly, truly deep down want to be. Like if you really want to be eating healthy and you're not, right? That's going to come back in many different ways. That's not going to feel good. So I call default standards as subpar standards, really, because default standards usually are just saying we're operating below where we want to be and where we actually see ourselves. And default standards generally don't require much from us. Not much energy, not much input, right? It's kind of just our norm. And so it could be a sign that we're lazy with how we spend our attention. Because if everything is catching your attention, then you lose focus and you lose energy on what is most important to you and what matters most to you. So essentially, if everything is important, then nothing is really important. Right? If you say yes to everything, that means you really stand for nothing. And I will tell you that this is the mindset many people operate with. And we know mindset is nothing more than your patterns of thought. So when your thinking is off, it's going to lead you to doing things that are off from where you want to be. But when your thinking is on track, then you're on track. And so will your attention be on track. But if you're not on track with your thinking and that's off track, guess what? Your attention will be off track as well. And this is what I find is when people are focused on the 80 to 90% of life that really doesn't have any bearing on moving the needle about their happiness or their health, guess what? They're not moving the needle on what they value. They're not moving the needle on their standards. They're just responding to the distractions around them. And the more distracted you are, the less clear you are on your goals and your standards. So it becomes this vicious cycle. So just notice if you are in a phase of life right now where you're saying yes to everything, everybody, the holidays are coming, this is a perfect time to think about your standards. Because before we know it, there's going to be so many events to attend, so many people wanting your attention, gifts to buy, things to do, and the yes, yes, yes may be coming flying out of our mouth. And I always like to come back to thinking that it's not about just saying no, because whenever you say yes to something, you're actually already saying no to something. So the more I say yes to outside things in my life, I realize the more I'm saying no to inside what I need and what I want to prioritize. So I definitely make sure that this time of year, particularly, I raise my standards. I raise the yes on what I want. So I make sure I don't steer myself off track. And the more times I say yes to myself, that may mean I have to say no to others, but it also could mean I'm saying yes to what I want and keeping that as my priority while still saying yes to meeting somebody else's needs. So I don't think it has to be a yes and a no. It could be a yes and a yes. It could be a yes and a no. It could be a no and a no. That doesn't work for me and that won't work for you, right? So I don't like to think of it as a zero-sum game. And I think people think of it that way because they'll just say, oh, I just need to learn to say no more in my life. And I think you just need to learn to say yes more to the things that matter to you. And that means you have to know what matters to you and what your standards are. And that feels really good inside of the body. So your standards should be reflective of what you want to prioritize in this phase of life. And as we're heading into the holiday season, we know that overconsumption goes up, overindulging on things goes up. I'm going to just name food and alcohol to be the two. Shopping is another one, right? We just buy, consume, buy, and consume. And so what is your priority these next 7 weeks? What do you want your standards to be? How are you going to elevate them? What do you want to move the needle on in terms of your goals and your progress towards something? And maybe you want to drink less this season, or maybe not drink at all. Great goals. So how are you making that a priority? And I really want you to think about it. How are you making that a priority? Are you making it a priority? Or are you leaving it to chance? Are you leaving it to your default standard? Because I'll tell you what, we already know how the default standard works. It doesn't require effort. It doesn't require energy. But guess what? You already know the results. You're going to get exactly the way you've been operating. So are you making it a priority? And if you are, great. Are you working with somebody? Right? Because if we're working with somebody on something, that means it takes higher priority in our life. We are more vested in it. Because I want you to make sure that you are not working on alcohol, but you're working on what's driving the unhealthy behavior, right? Too much alcohol consumption is a maladaptive behavior. So we don't blame the alcohol, right? That's podcast number 1. It's not about the alcohol. Over drinking is not about the alcohol. That's the wrong problem. We can't target the wrong problem because then we'll never solve for it. So if you're still thinking, how am I going to control the alcohol? Do I bring it in the house? Keep it out of the house? Yes, that's part of it. But you got to do the deeper work of why do you want the alcohol in the beginning? What is driving that unhealthy behavior? Because you know from listening to this podcast, it's not about focusing on the alcohol even more. It's the direct opposite of that. You got to focus on it less. So no, it's not about focusing on the drink plan. That's about drinking. We don't want to focus on the drink plan. The drink plan is just a tool for you to see if you're accountable to yourself. But it's not the deeper work that we do inside of Epic You. Inside Epic You, you get videos, you get courses on doing the actual work. You get worksheets on doing the actual inner work that needs to happen for you to deprogram your brain to not want this maladaptive behavior called drinking and overdrinking. And then you come to the coaching calls to make sure you're implementing the work appropriately. And in the calls, we solve any trauma or any drama that needs to be healed or resolved. And here's what I will tell you, my friend. You can do it alone, but most people don't get success. Let's look at the facts. Over 90% of people who try to change this maladaptive behavior on their own fail. They can't do it alone. Over 90% can't do it alone. And if you go at it alone, most likely you're going to struggle for years. I've done it. I've seen it with my clients, right? They struggle, and they're just like, darn it. Okay, fine. I'm going to get help. And you want to get help because coaching is going to heal you faster, right? So you can end the struggle. You can end the agony. You can end that split personality that you feel like you have because you really want to learn what works for you. And you want to find a coach that's going to find what's going to work for you. And that's exactly what I do for you because you want to end the suffering. So when raising your standards, when elevating your standards for yourself, what are you going to focus on? What are you going to focus on for the rest of the year? And by focusing on that, you're going to relieve some form of suffering for you. It could be focusing on your weight, right? It could be focusing on getting more metabolically flexible and healthy. It could be focusing on not wanting alcohol and changing the root cause of why you want it. And what I love about elevating your standards, it's really like elevating your health. Who does not want to elevate their health? Who does not want better health? I mean, that is such a great thing to want. There is no shame in wanting to be healthier. There should be no shame around wanting to drink less or not at all, right? There should be no shame around alcohol. All you want is to get healthier and more vibrant, epic life. And here's what I find interesting about this concept. If you were to talk about this with others, it feels delightful. When my daughter came home and said, I got an 80 on my math test. How do you feel about that, Mom? I said, wow, I think that's wonderful. How do you feel about it? She's like, it's not bad, but there's something I don't like. And I said, oh, what is that? She goes, I don't know. I don't have words. And I said, can I try to help you? And she says, yeah. I said, maybe it doesn't meet your standard. She goes, you're right. It doesn't meet my standard. I said, oh, so you have higher standards for yourself. She says, I do. And if we could see it in that kind of context, right? You just want a higher standard for yourself. And that is a beautiful thing. That is where we grow and we have a growth mindset. And that's where the neuroplasticity kicks in the brain. And my goodness, this is where I see women on fire for wanting to conquer this and become a healthier version of themselves. This is why I'm so passionate about Epic You. I'm calling it Epic You, Epic Health, because that's what it is. We don't want to live in a place of shame or addicted to toxic chemicals that we keep putting in our bodies. We want to be free from that. We want to be free so that we can just enjoy life happy and healthy. And a lot of times we need support to get there because we can't do it on our own. The statistics are there. They've informed us of how we can do it, and it's not by going at it alone. And so when over 90% of people can't solve the problem on their own, isn't that great to know that you already know what doesn't work for most people and then what does? And behavioral modification is the most effective resource people have for breaking maladaptive behaviors, a cognitive behavioral modality. And that's exactly what I do for my clients. And look, I couldn't help myself. There was no way. Do you know how many years I tried helping myself over and over just to come up with the same results, not getting anywhere? If I didn't reach out for help 5 years ago, I would still be drowning my brain, drowning my liver, drowning my feelings each and every night with a bottle of Chardonnay. I'd still be doing that. Why? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought alcohol was the problem. That's what pharmacy school taught me. That's what medical practice taught me. Alcohol is the problem. Just avoid alcohol. Well, that doesn't work. That didn't work for me. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I signed up for getting a coach, I didn't even know that would work. I was just wanting not to be in agony and suffering all the time. And I know that I wanted to raise my standards for myself. I didn't want to constantly be doing this. And if that meant I had to show up and get coached on uncomfortable topics, that's what I did. Not because I loved getting coached on uncomfortable topics. It's because I wanted the results on the other side. I wanted to be free of the torture I kept putting myself through every night with a bottle of wine. I also wanted to be free from wanting alcohol so dang much. Why was it so important to me? I had no idea why it was so important to me to have. I was so attached to it. It was like my blankie, my stuffy, my pacifier, right? I have a whole podcast early on talking about how it was my adult pacifier. I kept sucking it down. Sucking it down for what purpose? Where was the end game to this? What was the end game? I needed a coach to get in my brain, mine it for all it needed, so I spit it all out so then I could see and understand why I had an overdrinking problem. And that's the beauty of coaching. That's exactly what we do. We get inside your brain, figure out what's going on so that we can solve and heal and come out the other side. I knew I wanted to elevate the standards for myself, and I want to help you elevate the standards for yourself. I want you to be done with that constant nightly struggle that I had, or whether it's a weekend struggle or a weekday struggle or an everyday struggle. Because here's the fact, my life was mostly good. But I was making it worse with my drinking habit. Not only did the drinking affect my health and my brain and my liver and all that stuff, but it also affected my self-esteem and how I saw myself, how I viewed myself, and it impacted my self-confidence. That suffered as well, and I didn't want to keep suffering this way. So I set elevated standards. I wanted to soar over this problem, soar past this problem, be healed of this problem. And the lovely thing is when you get over it, right? When you set these elevated standards for yourself, you're actually elevating your life. You're elevating how you perceive yourself, how you experience yourself, and how you just feel more elevated because you're actually living the life you want to be living. There's that quote that says something like, pain is guaranteed, but suffering is optional. I just wanted to end the suffering part. I knew there would be pain in life, but I wanted to end the suffering that I was creating on my own life. And if you can end it, why wouldn't you? I mean, that's the glorious part about it. And so Epic You can help you end your suffering. That's why it's called Epic You. You help yourself end suffering with my help and the tools that I've created. And here's the funny thing is that it's not even about drinking. It's so funny when we have new people come and join us and they're working through the modules and they're listening to the videos and they're doing the worksheets and they're like, oh my gosh, these coaching calls are so not about drinking. I know I heard that on the podcast, but I really thought we would somehow come back to drinking on these calls. And we never do, because drinking is not the problem. Drinking is the maladaptive behavior. The problem starts in your brain, and it's generally not about the alcohol. It's about something else going on in your life, whether it's a trauma or a drama, right? We're there to heal it. It's funny. One of the ladies even said, I thought you were going to ask me about my drink plan and how much I drank. And nope, you can monitor that as much as you want, but that's not what I'm checking in on. I'm getting to the root of what's causing you to even want the alcohol. Because, my friend, it's not about the alcohol. It never is. And you may not be able to see that, and you may not be able to understand that. And that's why I've got you. I didn't understand it either. I didn't understand it until I did. Until somebody showed me what exactly was going on inside of my brain and how to heal it. And one thing that I learned that we can all benefit from is that when we keep turning to the bottle for emotional regulation, we do not learn those tools ourselves. When we keep turning to food for emotional regulation, we do not learn those tools ourselves. Why have I created so many programs to help women around these substances that we keep going to, or these behaviors we keep doing, is because we have to learn how to become emotionally mature so that we can have the success in life that we want. You want success in life? You can get it. You want greater health in life? You can get it. And all it takes is training your brain to run better thinking patterns and to relieve any trauma and drama from that brain so you are free. You are free from a split mind that says, I want alcohol. No, I don't. I want alcohol. No, I don't. No, but you become whole. So this, my friend, is what I want for you to become whole during this time of over-decadence. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be in our faces. It's going to be marketed to us. Our friends might even go crazy from all the overindulgences and the prettiness of the cakes and the cookies and all the things. And yes, you can get excited about it too, but it doesn't mean you need to overconsume. Instead, elevate your standards. Become the woman you want to be now. And this is what I invite you into if you want to join us in Epic You. We are actually even doing another call this month because we are going to be talking about intentional parenting. Because this is an issue coming up that I'm seeing that I want to address. So we don't give our burdens and our projections and all the things around food or alcohol to our children. Very important. We don't pass this on generationally. And this is a topic I'm passionate about. I feel God has given me the desire to do this. He's actually even given me the outline, and I already know what I'm going to be saying on this webinar. So please join us if you're inside Epic You. This will be an additional class I will be hosting this month so we can be grateful for our children and appreciate them and set them up for great success, just like you're going to do for yourself by elevating your standards. All right, my friends, I love you so much, and I will see you next week. If you want to change your relationship with alcohol and with yourself, then come check out Epic You. It's where you get individualized help mastering the tools so you can become a woman who can take it or leave it and be in control around alcohol in any situation. Epic You is the place for women who want to be healthy, confident, and empowered to accomplish their goals and live their best life. Come join us over at epicu.com/epicu. That's epicu.com/EPICYOU. I can't wait to see you there.